This is 1 in 44, a presentation of Anderson Center for Autism. 1 in 44 is a weekly show devoted to autism spectrum disorder.
Good morning and welcome to 1 in 44, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, Chief Development Officer at Anderson Center for Autism. And I am very pleased today to have as our guest Alison Krause, who is the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Clinical Services for the Staff Assistant Experience, with Ramapo. And Alison, it's just been a long time coming, and I'm thrilled you're on the show. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's our pleasure. One of the things that I do on the show is try to have a variety of guests who are doing really interesting and impactful work in any capacity in the field of working with people with autism. And while I know that Ramapo has broad impact and has a lot of different programs. There are the one we're going to talk about today specifically is the staff assistant experience. But I always like to start out with a little bit of background on who you are. You know, tell us about where you got started and what brought you to the position you're in today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Dutchess County, and I wound up going to Albany for my undergrad, and then I did my master's in social work at Fordham in the city. And I was there for 6 years, and I worked for Big Brothers Big Sisters, doing some mentorship programs there. And I kind of wound up running away to Europe for a year, and that brought me back to this area in the Hudson Valley. I've had the opportunity to work in so many different spaces and mostly kind of community mental health and a lot of crisis work. And I've been now, it'll be 2 years at Ramapo in March. And so I started doing really just the clinical work, and we've had some staffing changes. And so, you know, we have a shared leadership model within our program. So I'm one of the directors that kind of holds a lot of the strategic planning, like you said, and overseeing the implementation of all the social emotional learning and clinical services. But Ramapo is definitely a totally different place than anywhere I've ever worked. I mean, being on the campus, which is kind of what we're known for, is such a wonderful thing. And, you know, we do a lot of kind of nature-based work in our vocational programming and clinical services. So it's such a joy to work here for sure.
It's a beautiful campus, absolutely, and but I appreciate the background on you. I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit also about the broad sort of Ramapo mission, because my understanding is that there's Ramapo in Rhinebeck, New York, in Dutchess County, which is where you're located, and it's close to where Anderson is. And we've had a lot of crossover over the years and different opportunities. Actually, even one year I took my team in the development office to Ramapo for some team building, which was really cool. So I know you do a lot. I know you definitely are well known for running a wonderful summer camp. But there's a Ramapo presence in New York City, is there not? And in other cities throughout the country. Yeah,
so that's really the Training Institute, which kind of has developed our Ramapo approach, which really is the way that we show up in the work. It kind of mirrors a lot of aspects of positive psychology and strengths-based psychology, but it's been developed since probably the mid 80s to kind of come to the fruition of what it is today. It really teaches our staff how to model, how to use self-awareness, how to, once again, kind of show up in the work as a person that has flaws and challenges. It really normalizes a lot of that, and also provides some kind of specific strategies in how to manage challenging behaviors, how to kind of adjust behaviors that maybe are getting in the way of building positive relationships or making friends, and kind of helping people to change behaviors to support their desired outcome. So, you know, we kind of come from the Ramapo approach is really built on the idea that all young people want to learn, they want to be in community, they want to feel valued, they want to feel connected, have a sense of accomplishment. And so all the kind of behavioral interventions we're using are started with that approach. And it's really a beautiful thing. You know, we have a campus here where our staff are living in some of the same buildings as our participants in the staff assistant experience or summer camp. They're right in the bunks with them. So just the communal atmosphere of Ramapo is really special.
Okay, thank you for that. So that's a really great segue into what we wanted to dive into in this interview with you, is to talk about, maybe expand on what you just said about the communal experience, the staff assistant experience in particular, which I've heard about for many, many years, and I think is very unique. So I'd love to share with our listeners, kind of, what is the staff assistant experience? How long has it been going on? What are the goals? How many participants do you have? Oh, everything. How do you get involved? And then what?
I'll give it all.
Yeah. Well, and what the Ramapo approach is, because I think you touched on it with the staffing and the training, but why that way? Why not another way?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll answer that question to start. I think the reason why is because it's the most successful. And I think we see this in our everyday lives is people are more responsive to communication that feels supportive, that feels that they're validated, that they feel nurtured and cared for. And if someone's going to change, they're going to change in an environment that creates those emotions for them. And I mean, I'm a social worker, so I deeply believe in all of this stuff, but I mean, I see it every day in the work we do. And I think, our staff, so we have kind of different lines, obviously, but the direct support professionals, we call them Rama Year, and they kind of fill in different programming. But for the SAE or staff assistant experience, they're living in the same living quarters, but maybe not the same room. And so it's an opportunity for them to be in this community space of neurotypical people. However, there's also an opportunity for our staff to be able to, they're living here rent free. It's really lovely, especially in times like this. They have the dining hall and the cafeteria to access. And I think because we're taking kind of fresh out of college, bachelor's level human service, social work, different kind of BSW, that kind of field. People come in and they have interest in learning about human services. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. We have some OTs on campus, and we really support the learning of these individual staff. And kind of, we recognize that young people aren't staying in work settings for, 5-10 years. And so we recognize that, and we do a 15-month contract, and we have people who extend, but the goal is for them to put in a really strong 15 months. And we see it all the time. They're so connected to our participants. Like, it really is a different kind of setting than typical group homes or residentials, where maybe there isn't a feeling of burnout or disconnect and kind of, what is the next step? I don't really know, because maybe I don't have the education level. Our staff are really, okay, I'll be here for 15 months. I'll get everything I can from this learning experience. And then I go to study speech or OT or social work, or maybe I'm a manager at a group home now. And I think that difference in the staffing approach is really huge for our programming.
So that's great. And we're going to segue actually into a quick break and then come back and get into the rest of it. Just to kind of get you thinking while you're on the break. I definitely want to hear more about the sort of day to day over the course of those 15 months, or, however long the person stays with you. But I think a question that might be on the minds of some of our listeners as you're talking is, we hear a lot about the importance of especially for individuals on the autism spectrum, about making those social relationships and staying connected. And so if you're going into this knowing that the staff person is probably going to stick around for a little over a year and then move on to something else, I know I'm going to want to know from you in the second half of the show, do you do anything proactively, or is there anything embedded in the work that sort of proactively prepares the relationship to sort of be a very open, we know that this is probably not going to be a years long relationship, and that's purposeful, and there's kind of support around that. I would just be curious on that end, in addition to hearing more about the daily kind of day in a life of the staff assistant experience and what the outcomes are and the goals are for everybody involved. We're going to take a short break. This is 1 in 44, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and we'll be right back.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Alone, our reach is limited. No matter how great our intentions, on our own, we can only stretch so far. But at Rotary, we believe the right group of people working together can make our communities, our world, a better place. Rotary is a worldwide network of community volunteers dedicated to helping people in need. Learn more at Rotary.org. Rotary, humanity in motion.
And now, 1 in 44 continues on 100.7 WHUD. This is a weekly community affairs program presented by the Anderson Center for Autism.
Welcome back to 1 in 44, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and I'm talking with Alison Krause, Director of Strategic Initiatives and Clinical Services at the Staff Assistant Experience. I want to call it Staff Assistance Experience
So many words.
so badly. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
And you're located at the Ramapo campus, which is in Rhinebeck, New York, in Dutchess County, and right up the road from Anderson. So it's been really interesting hearing about your background and the staff training experience, specifically in regards to how the staff are trained and kind of the model and the approach that you use. So going back to the question I kind of dropped at the beginning of our break, since there's an expectation at this point, kind of that the staff who are coming to work are going to stay for, I think you said usually 15 months.
About contract. 15 months. Yeah.
What do you do? Are you very open about that with the individuals that they're going to be living with, that this is going to be kind of short term, right?
Yeah.
And their families. I wonder also about their families right from the get-go, or does that kind of evolve more naturally?
Yeah, I mean, I think because it is a transition to independence program and the average length of stay for a participant is 2 years, that we talk so openly about transitions in general. And there's this real opportunity for modeling because our staff are transitioning in their life into something that is, different or bigger or more exciting or whatever the next step in their journey is. And we talk a lot about, just because someone is in your life for a short period of time doesn't mean that it's not meaningful. We talk about how do you stay connected, right? Like sending emails and being connected through, we have an SAE Instagram that we use. And so that's a great way for people to stay kind of in the loop and connected to programming. And it is a challenge, but I think, the reality of life is there's so much transition and things that are changing and transient all the time. And so kind of being able to have open conversations with them, I think is such a great skill building, because change and transition for individuals on the spectrum is so hard that we're doing that work all the time. Yeah. And I do see really remarkable changes from individuals when they first come and they kind of latch onto a staff and they feel really connected, and that staff leaves to, a year in or a year and a half in, and they're like, oh yeah, no, they're leaving, but it's exciting. They're going to college. It's so good for them. I'm happy for them. It's a very different thing as they get used to kind of positive goodbyes and understanding what that means.
Right. And also what a great natural way to offer exposure and experience with empathy and compassion, and that it's difficult, especially if you struggle generally with social cues and social communication and relationship building and maintenance. The idea that you're getting used to not taking it personally is it's not about me that they're moving on. It's about them that they're moving on. And I like that. That's a great example. Also, it occurs to me, and this might just be because I work here at Anderson, most of the students and adults that we serve are staying with us for years. And they do get, like anybody does, you get attached to staff. You have preferred people that you work with who are with you in school or in the community or in your residence. And it's very hard when they move on. However, it's kind of the opposite with the staff assistant program and the staff assistant experience, where the individuals who were living there for 2 years are more than likely going to see at least 2 different staff move on while they're still there. And I feel like that's kind of a cool switch in terms of role reversal, where, they become the ones who are kind of, I don't know, in a way, sort of like owning the experience a little bit more. And it's maybe for some, it becomes more their experience. I don't know.
I mean, our staff, like the kind of direct support line staff, the Rama years, are mostly young. Like a lot of them are coming kind of right out of a college experience. And so they really are like a peer age. So there's so much modeling and mirroring and opportunity to kind of talk through, like, I'm really scared to leave. I'm really scared to go on to whatever is next. And I feel so passionately about like our staffing model, because being in community mental health and seeing the burnout in so many places, as much as saying goodbye is hard, I think having people who are so committed and they love the participants and they're actively learning together. Like, I really love our team. And, I've been here long enough to see a kind of turnover, and it's really nice to get these like young, spirited, excited people in. And I really think it's a good model.
It sounds like a great model and very unique. So talk to us, we have a few minutes left in this first interview today. So what do you stay connected to the staff who get trained and come in into the staff assistant experience? Do you stay connected? Do you know where they go afterwards? Do any of them come back?
So I mean, summer camp is crazy. I have to say for myself, when I hear about like living in the bunk life, I'm like, I would not come back, but they come back every year after year. And even international people. I mean, that's another thing about Ramapo is we have people staffed here from across the country, international staff. We're also doing now, and it's more for participants, but we started a weekend connection program where any alumni or like participants who maybe are in an inclusive college program, or they have some kind of tie to Ramapo and they're a young adult within our age group, can come for these weekend connection events, which is a nice way to, keep the alumni connected. And I mean, since I've been here, like all the staff that have left are on to social work, they're on to speech pathology. I had one just left and he's the manager of a group home in Albany. And so, it's really incredible that they come here and they feel this connection to the work and they want to keep doing it. It's great.
That's wonderful. That's great to hear. I love the weekend kind of connection piece. I think that's often lost or overlooked in our field. I think it's really hard, especially for people who are living more independently and not in a residential program that's sort of 24/7, 365. It's like everything's great, when there's structure and opportunities during the week, but on the weekends, it can feel really isolating and lonely. And it's one of those things that a lot of times, so many people are getting sort of errands done and taking care of, doing stuff with their families. But if you have a really small social circle or struggle with just, having a social circle at all, those times can often feel the loneliness. Because it doesn't feel like there's much to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this population we serve within the staff assistant experience is really underserved, because there's individuals that need a really high level of care. And then there's individuals that can kind of function and go to work and like have a life. And then there's this in between where there's not really a great deal of services. And so I think that we're kind of catering to that population and really like making this community where you're not the odd one out in a neurotypical setting. You're not like, oh, I don't belong here. I'm not connecting with anyone. And you're also around people that you can communicate with and make jokes with and have fun with. And I think the community aspect here is so, so valuable for our participants.
So does the staff assistant experience exist on the Ramapo campus, or is it in the surrounding community?
No, so they live on campus. Okay. And then like a lot of their vocational, because at heart, we are a vocational program. I mean, we touch on everything, but the vocational experiences, a lot of them exist on campus. And that's kind of how it started. We had 2 young adults who came from summer camp, loved Ramapo. The parents were like, I want them to be here. How can we make this work? And they just started working on campus. And so then it kind of became this real program. And that's why it's called staff assistant, because they were really in the main office helping with the office work, in the cafeteria doing the food prep. We have animals on campus that they help take care of. And now it's really become a real program.
And the introduction of the neurotypical staff who live with the individuals who participate in the program, that was added in later, or did that naturally evolve too?
So I think, when it started, they were living together, but it was like maybe you were living with the chef, or you were living, right? Like,
okay.
Really, and then I think as we increased the programming and we found a need, like we need to support them recreationally, maybe they need a little bit for the independent living skills, and also for us to broaden our horizons on who we're serving, right? Not like just someone who can completely be independent.
Right.
We've kind of changed the staffing model a bit.
So that's interesting. So do you still look to try to align two people living together with similar interests or similar backgrounds?
So right now, the way that it is there's two neurodiverse peers that share like an apartment style living. So they have a kitchenette and a bathroom. And then in the hall, there's a staff apartment. So they're living in the same community hall, but not in the same room. So they're going to dinner together in the dining hall. We're together all day. It's definitely very community based, but we find that it's better for them to have to kind of problem solve with a peer that also has some challenge, because a staff person is going to more cater to what they need. And It challenges them to like have the hard discussion. It challenges them to maybe like have an argument with their roommate and have to deal with that. And it's really independent building. Like it's
real world stuff.
Real world. Yeah.
Exactly. To borrow a phrase from MTV, I guess, back in the day. All right. So that's really cool. We have about a minute left in the show. I just want to make sure we give some time to where do people go to find out more about this program? Do you have an online presence or social media, or where do you want people to go?
Yeah. So the staff assistant experience, we have like a little tab. If you Google Ramapo for Children, ramapoforchildren.org, the staff assistant experience, we have a page on the main Ramapo page. Also, we have a Instagram, an SAE Instagram. So it's Ramapo_SAE. I can send it to you if you want to
Yeah, we'll put it out when we share the link. That sounds great.
Great. Yeah. And it's a great way that the Instagram is really fun because the participants are always running it. So it's a great way to stay connected.
And just to be realistic, is there room right now? Do you have a waiting list?
Yeah. We are actively recruiting. We do have a couple spots open right now. And then we do summer programming as well. So there are 3-week sessions, and we have lots of availability for summer 2023.
That's great to know.
Yeah, it's great.
Listeners, take note, because there aren't that many services out there that are open and have vacancies right now. So this is really an awesome opportunity. Yeah.
And the summer camp, we are families are able to access self-direction funding. Mm-hmm. We're pushing more and more with OPWDD and self-direction funding for our year-round programming. We've recently been able to expand in some places. It's I'm sure very tricky of all the brokers and all of that stuff, but it's a big part of our initiative right now is to just make the program as accessible as possible to all the families.
That's great. Thank you, Alison Krause, Director of Strategic Initiatives and Clinical Services for the Staff Assistant Experience at Ramapo. We have to finish up this interview, but thank you so much. And we'll be back with you shortly to continue talking about the programs going on and hear from a participant in the Staff Assistant Experience.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
So this is 1 in 44, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky. And remember, Anderson cares.
You've been listening to 1 in 44, a weekly presentation of the Anderson Center for Autism. Join us for another edition of the show at this time next weekend.